Welcome to Rocket Ship, the home of epic React Native content. I'm Simon Grimm, creator of Galaxies.dev, and once again, the host of today's show. I'm kinda getting used to this format, just being alone. Hope you enjoy it as well. Today, you can expect a quick episode on updates from the React Native and partially also the React ecosystem, as well as reasons why you should love or absolutely hate React Native. I've got a personal story to tell from last week that I definitely want to share with you, so stay tuned until the end. To get started, let's jump into our React Native release radar. Last week I already talked about FlashList version 2. There's a new alpha version of the probably currently recommended way to have performant lists in your React Native application. Now, pretty much at the same time, Jay Maestrich from LegendList and LegendState released the first version of LegendList. LegendList has been in the making for quite some time. I followed this from the beginning when he made like the first commits and shared something on X and said like, oh, this is actually pretty interesting. I can get really good performance, but just using JavaScript. And everyone was like, nah, that's not gonna happen. But it looks like Jay really nailed it. With the support of a lot of great minds, it has now become a quite popular repository. It has just reached version 1 and is already almost at 2K stars on GitHub. So LegendList, although in the beginning I thought like, this is gonna be another like niche thing, this looks like it could be a solid competitor in the space of performant lists in the React Native world. However, what I already said before about FlashList, that it's a complete rewrite and using JS only, this is true for LegendList as well. Maybe LegendList also kinda like gave FlashList some ideas. I don't know. But anyway, both are a drop-in replacement for FlatList, so it's quite easy to give it a try. As before, I know that many people got really good results by using FlashList instead of FlatList. Okay, this is going to be hard to pronounce, but not everyone's gonna benefit from FlatList, from FlashList, because you might have very specific requirements. Remember, in one of our episodes, my good friend Aaron was here. They made like a Bible application. They had to scroll to a specific verse or whatever, and that was pretty hard with FlashList. He, I think, eventually managed it, but some cases are just inherently really challenging to represent with a specific list. So therefore, give it a try. Check out FlatList, check out FlashList, and now check out LegendList, and we're gonna maybe talk about a new list in the future. But for the moment, I think LegendList is here to stay, so give it a try. I think this could be a really cool thing. Now, I discovered also a new package called Type GPU Confetti. Software Mention posted about this. I'm showing this on X as well. There was a little tweet. Pretty cool. I'm always down here for a good confetti package, and that one looks to be really performant. I don't know, yeah, 67 stars, I'm one of them. I don't know, you always get me with a good confetti package, so check that out if you're interested in that. But beyond that, we have some bigger stuff to talk about. Not yet the Expo SDK 53 release, although that might happen every other day because I'm not recording on the day the episode goes live. If at any point in the future you listen to an episode and the SDK was already released, I'm sorry, I pre-recorded it probably. Anyway, there's an RC for a React compiler from the React team. That one is quite interesting. So if you don't know, React compiler is a build time tool that optimizes your React app through automatic memoization, which means you can drop all the use callbacks and use memos from your code because eventually, technology is smarter than you and has figured it out anyway. Therefore, I'm really excited about this because I never really understood the concept in the first place. I'm perfectly benefiting from all these tools that make the life for dumb developers easier. I'm absolutely down for that. Just like I love the AI tools, I'm benefiting from all that stuff. Anyway, RC means release candidate. That means the stable release is near, which is a good note. And this also works already with Expo and React Native, as Evan Bacon teased. He actually shared a little before and after demo on X, and he actually got really great performance. Like, you can see this. Sometimes you're just like, yeah, my app might be faster, I don't know. But if you can really see it with your eye, then you know that, oh, that was actually a dramatic effect. And that's what Evan's example was about. And Evan, meanwhile, also posted a really interesting article on the Expo blog that you should definitely check out in like the complete thing. It was called Best Practices for Reducing Lag in Expo Apps. There are many different things he shares in terms of how you can find blocking things in your React Native application, things that slow down your application, things that cause lag. It starts with using the right compiler tools, like going into the profiler and setting highlight updates when components render to true. There's like a little tiny checkbox, and you will immediately see when running your application all the views of your app that update. I think this is one of the really like the easiest way to figure out what's going on, because if you constantly see like all these updates in the rectangles in your app, you know that there's something wrong. Beyond that, he brings up some general stuff like use TypeScript, use the JavaScript features, ESLint, but most importantly, really also use the React compiler, which ties into the previous news of React compiler is at RC stage, which is a good sign for us to finally use it. So you can enable this in your application. You can also run a little check by running npx React compiler health check at latest. This will check if your project is pretty much ready for it, and then you can also enable it. I don't know if it's enabled by default with Expo SDK 53, but something along those lines should be easily possible, as well as React 19, which will be also or is also one of the recommendations for improving the performance of your application. Now, in the end, Evan shared something interesting. Now, there's of course a whole lot more to talk about performance, but I don't want to look at that article. It is really great. I will put a link in the show notes. And we're going to maybe do another video in the future about how we can pinpoint those bottlenecks. I know that Alex Moreau was recently on the React Native Radio podcast to talk about Flashlight, and he's been on the Galaxies podcast or the Rocket Ship podcast before. I know Flashlight is a great tool for figuring out what's wrong with your app. But all of this is to say there is one last sentence that I almost overlooked in Evan's article, and that is, and this is really the last sentence, and that said, the React Native new architecture does automatically recycle native views. So he was talking about list components and how list components greatly affect your app. Does automatically recycle native views, meaning list performance could be greatly improved if a new list component were to build with a new architecture in mind. And then those two, the eye smiley, which is ooh, I know something that you don't know. Okay, Evan, what do you know that we don't know? You already got the Expo UI, and that was teased before, and I was really excited about this. How can you end that with this? Because lists are really a big thing in React Native world, and we just had FlashList version 2, we just had LegendList. Now there's also another list coming up, which is built with the new architecture in mind. I don't know what you read between the lines here, but to me, this gives very strong Evan Bacon vibes of I'm actually tinkering on something behind the scenes here in Texas. So, is he still in Texas, actually? I think. Follow him on Instagram. You will see where he's. But I'm excited about that. I don't know what he's tinkering on, but it's always good because people usually like to complain about these things. So, yeah, read the article linked below. Let's talk about another section. My tiny win section for this week is pretty short. I just want to thank one person, and that is Jamin Holmgren. Jamin was on the podcast. We had a great episode, and last week Jamin tweeted about the Rocket Ship podcast that he really enjoyed an episode. And you know what? That really made me happy because I respect Jamin. He has built an incredible company. He has built an incredible life and family and whatnot. And if you get a compliment like that from someone you really respect, that means a lot. That means more like 100 YouTube comments to me or 10,000 views on a random video. Really, if this one person says something great, it just feels good. And that was my tiny win of the week. I had certainly some other wins during that week, but in terms of this stuff here, that was my personal highlight. So thank you, Jamin. And thanks, of course, also to everyone else listening to the podcast week after week. This might actually change, but let's talk about that in our last segment. Alright, last section for today is built in public, and I want to share some of the updates I'm working on and a personal story. Now, first of all, a bit negative news. So my numbers for galaxies have declined, and they actually declined quite steep over a couple of weeks, which got me thinking, like, what's going on here? I didn't change a thing. It looks like my Google search traffic rapidly declined at some point in like mid-February or March. And this is, of course, eventually trickling down to like signups for galaxies, and then also, of course, churn comes in. So that's why the numbers now, like a lagging indicator, go down rapidly. I'm now seeing the effect of those lower numbers. Now, all of that caused me to think about a couple of things, because right now I can't really invest a lot of time into new stuff. Just giving you an idea of what I do, I currently do one video per week. That's like a tutorial, a clone, an informational video, whatever. A video per week. I do a podcast episode per week. I write a newsletter per week, and I currently do 2 or 3 short form videos per week. That's like at least 5 deliverables on my list. And I usually work like 4 days. I like to take the Friday off for my wife and my daughter. And also I kind of don't really work full time on the other 4 days. So getting to those 5 deliverables per week is almost like 90% of my week, which leaves barely room for anything new, innovative, any space for thinking about or coming up with new projects. Therefore, I had to make a decision. I already made the decision for this podcast to be an easier version, a lighter version for you going forward. Now, after years of doing a weekly video on YouTube, I finally decided to drop this for the moment to one video every 14 days. The reason is, well, there are many reasons to that. So the one is that I haven't changed anything and my numbers went down, which means like, yeah, then I can also just try and do less videos. It probably won't affect my numbers anyway. If they go down further, it might be related to like doing less videos and I can do more, but it could also just stay stable at some point now. Also, I just don't have the time for the new projects. I want to put more time into like indie app development. I have, the AI therapy app, which is almost finished, and a big story on that in a second. I just have a lot of ideas for cool content, for things I want to put on galaxies, but because I'm on this content creator treadmill, and I constantly create new stuff every week without pause, just trying to stay on my schedule, it's really hard to be creative in some moments. I do my best, and I think I've kept this up pretty good over the years. However, I can feel it, it's hard, and I just want to try and improve the quality of my content a bit, and maybe reduce the quantity, therefore. I don't know how this plays out, but this is the built in public section and I want to share it. If in 6 months I have nobody using galaxies.dev anymore, then we can all point to this section here and say, maybe Simon, you should have thought twice. But for the moment, this is what I'm gonna do going forward. Now, there's one last thing that I want to talk with you about, and that is the new architecture. Now, the new architecture in React Native is cool. It is such a great improvement. It makes everything better until it doesn't. In my AI therapy application, I was of course using the new architecture because every new project that I start uses the new architecture. I feel like a quite forward-looking person, so I was like, yeah, of course I use the new architecture. And that was fine. However, I had a problem pretty much since the beginning of that application. I just ignored it most of the time and built out all the features until I had to return to this problem. And eventually, this problem almost made me quit React Native. I say it, really, it's true. I had an evening last week where I was lying in bed and I was like, I don't know if React Native is my thing anymore. Maybe I should just go with Swift. Okay, I've overcome this by now, but hear me out. So I was building the AI therapy application, and of course, if you have this, you can imagine a chat and chat inputs, and my chat input field at the bottom was just flickering with every character that I typed. Now, if you're in the React Native space, you might think of the video Theo did a couple of months ago in reaction to Dan Abramov, who said like controlled input sucks, and then they quickly fixed this. this was kind of the same problem. Like, it was re-rendering all the time, and I just couldn't figure it out. So I tinkered around with this, and I changed it to an uncontrolled input. It removed the re-rendering stuff. I put it into its own component. I tried pretty much everything possible, and it still existed. The flickering still existed. And at that point, I was already quite annoyed, because as a solo developer, spending like 2 or 3 hours on something like that, it's just, man, I don't have time for that stuff. I just want to continue with my day and build the features. I don't want to fix this. So I couldn't find a solution anywhere online. Some people said it's related maybe to native wind, some said absolute position, some said this, and eventually somebody made a reference to the new architecture, and I was so desperate that I was like, yeah, whatever. Let's just turn off the new architecture, run a new build, and let's see what happens. And the flickering was gone without the new architecture. And I was like, no, this can't be true. Please, no. I really didn't want this to be true, because that meant that I eventually would have to settle for not using the old new architecture, and I really didn't want to do this because my app was fine and I want to benefit from all the latest development in that space. So yeah, it worked. The flickering was gone. So I said, okay, here we go. For the moment, maybe we can figure something out. Maybe this gets fixed. Maybe there's an issue with like React Native screens or something else, and then it will work in the future. What followed is I wanted to get my app to the App Store and build it. And I can show some pictures. If you're on YouTube, just tell me what these pictures invoke in you. It's pretty much random error logs. It's not like you have some string in your app which is not using inside a text. These were like the horrible kind of build issues that you don't want to mess with. And I had them pretty much for like a whole day. And no matter what I did, I couldn't get around them. I had to like patch MMKV because I was now not using the new architecture, and some other things, and like polyfills were not working, and it was just an insane nightmare. I can tell you, I was losing my hair. You can see I already lost most of the hair about this. So long story short, I think, yeah, it's already a too long story, but eventually at some point I made the build work. Can't really say how I made it work again. I feel like it was a combination of clearing cache, although I did this for about 30 times, installing pods or updating node versions or whatnot in my project. I really tried everything. And I also upgraded to the new architecture again because I just couldn't stand that stuff. I wanted to be with the new architecture. And by now, I made the build work again, at least I think. I also brought back the flickering then. Then it was gone, and then it was back again. I think right now it is gone because, I finally found another solution, which is that this is caused not really by being absolute position, native wind, or anything like that, but by some strange combination of like having a tab bar and then pushing a page over it. And I think it has an issue with like the header for whatever reason. So if I push my page as a full screen modal instead of the regular push, which looks a bit ugly, honestly on iOS, I would rather have to like the default push. It works. If I push it as a modal, it works. If I push it as a default page, it's not working. So I'm 100% sure it's related to React Native screens. I posted all of this stuff like when I couldn't make the flickering work, when I couldn't make the build work on X, and many people shared the same struggles with React Native. And that's also the day when I was lying in bed thinking, maybe I should just go to iOS and Swift UI. Maybe the grass is greener on the other side. But there are so many cool things in React Native that you lose if you go for something else. Some people said Flutter. Okay, Flutter is a joke. Yeah, you can build cool stuff, but it's not native. It's really just, no, that is not the solution. Jetpack Compose, Swift UI, of course you can go native. And actually me as an indie developer, I previously thought about, I currently mostly built my apps for iOS because I don't want to test for Android. It's just I can move faster with React Native. However, in theory, I could just use Swift and Swift UI because I mostly built for iOS and make my money from iOS. But what you get with React Native is so much more. All the cool AI stuff is currently only working really great with things like React Native web stuff. It's not really working with Jetpack Compose and Swift in a way that it should. It really hallucinates a lot. The development experience with React Native is unbeaten. The live reload, the hot reload. Native developers would kill for that feature. It saves so much time. If I would have to constantly rebuild my application the whole day with Xcode, I would go crazy. Expo API routes and React Server components. Such a cool thing to have. I just built something with the Vercel AI SDK. I can stream back results from LLMs and can just include it in my project. I don't need another project. I can host them with EAS. Such a time and lifesaver. There are so many great things about React Native that they're easy to forget in these moments of frustration when we have build issues, when everything goes to shit in our projects, when we have dependency problems, when we need to upgrade the app. But honestly, at the end of the day, React Native is still currently the best way to build your mobile applications, especially if you really benefit from the code base for Android and iOS. In my case, as an indie developer, I'm not benefiting as much from that part, but I do benefit from all the ease of the tooling, from the development in the ecosystem, as I said, the API routes, everything that Expo is putting together. And so I will probably not go to Swift UI for the moment and stay with React Native. If you made it through this long story, I hope you had a better week. If you shared something like this, then share this episode on X, tweet me and tell me your story, how you almost left React Native. I think it's kind of normal to just get really annoyed when the most basic things don't work. And I'm glad that they finally work, because I can't get closure in my day if I can't make this, if I can't even when there are generic problems, I don't even see the horizon. I don't see the silver lining of, please just give me a different error next time when I change something, at least like that. But if you just get red logs and nothing works, it's so frustrating. Now, as you can hear, I overcome this. I have built my app. I have submitted it to Apple. I still want to do some bug fixes, but I think pretty soon, after a bit of internal testing, which I rarely do, I will roll out my AR therapy application, and I will keep you updated about what's going on. So, thanks for hearing me out on this. Check out all the links to the new packages, the React compiler, Evan's blog post, LegendList, everything else that we mentioned in the show notes. And also, if you like this episode, just like Jamin, it would be amazing if you could give me a rating on Apple App Store podcast or Spotify, or on YouTube. You can subscribe and like and do whatever, or just send me a DM if you don't want to do anything public. That really also means a lot to me. So, hope you enjoyed this week's episode. I will catch you next week, because I will try to keep the podcast still weekly, as I want to deliver fresh news from the React Native ecosystem to you. Videos will slow down to every other week, but for the moment, I'm going to try and be in your inbox every week, in your ears, with this podcast. I will catch you soon. Until then, happy coding. Simon. Thanks for joining today's episode. My goal is to share interesting stories and insights into the world of React Native development. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify. And on Spotify and Apple, you can leave up to a 5-star review. Because podcasts, and especially niche podcasts like this, are hard to find, subscribing and leaving a review does help me a lot. On top of that, check out my React Native courses on galaxies.dev that cover a variety of topics, from getting started to building and publishing your mobile app. Finally, you can share today's episode with a friend or colleague who would enjoy the topic of the show. If you have any questions or ideas for future episodes, find me on X or leave a comment on YouTube. And last but not least, thank you for listening and happy coding. Simon.